My name's Tom Jennings and this is the 24 Frames cast, and this is going to be a little bonus episode before I kick things off with season 3. There's been a slight delay due to my taking a little bit longer than I thought to write as many episodes as I could, but I thought I would do just a quick roundup of some of the home video purchases I've made over the past month, because I decided that after 11 years of faithful service, it was time to replace my projector, and I had an old Sony 1080p one, and after doing a lot of research and a lot of dithering and a lot of boring my girlfriend, whose opinion, I don't think she was really interested in giving me her opinion, and I wasn't overly interested in her opinion. I think I was doing it because I'd become so caught in two minds as to what one to be. I was hoping she was going to point me in the right direction, which ultimately didn't happen, although I am pleased to say she's extremely pleased with the new projector and how it's improved our film viewing sessions. But in the end, I decided to go with a Sony HDR 4K projector, and if you're not familiar with the different types of projector, there are native 4K ones and faux 4K ones, which use some kind of digital trickery called pixel shifting to create a 4K image. And I thought, well, I'm going to go all out and buy the 4K Sony projector. And it has been something of a revelation, because the image is, quite frankly, incredible. Blu-rays, UHDs, even DVDs look great on this projector. And I've even noticed when I go to the cinema to watch films that the images I'm seeing projected in front of me aren't quite as bright and as crisp as they are at home. And I did promise myself I was going to go to the cinema at least twice a week this year. And when you've got a home cinema, which frankly gives you a slightly better experience than you get at the cinema, I think that's going to be a hard goal to hit. But the reason I wanted to record this episode was because I picked up on UHD two of my all-time favourite epic films. The first, which was Ben-Hur, which this one seems to be a bit strange because I went into HMV in Manchester to buy it, or FOP I think it was actually, and although it was in stock they wouldn't sell it to me, and you could only pick up the steelbook from hmv.com, but the sort of standard release appears to be put back. I don't know if there's any kind of problem there, but yeah, hold tight if you haven't got hold of a copy of it, because I noticed it is coming out in Britain. I think it's already out in America, but if my memory says, I think it's going to be coming out on a standard release at the end of April. And the other one was a UHD, which has had quite an annoying history for purchase. It was actually Lawrence of Arabia on UHD. Now, you could get this as part of a Columbia Classics box set that came out a few years ago. I didn't pick that up. It's about £300, I think, and I couldn't really justify the outlay. And then it came out on a steelbook, which seemed to come in and out of stock. I thought I'd procured one through Amazon in America. That order was cancelled, and I'd sort of given up hope this was ever going to get a standalone release, but lo and behold, it has now been given a standard release. And I did actually pick up, I think it was for £3 on Apple store, like a Dolby Vision version of this film, which looked pretty damn decent actually when I watched it on television. But I have been looking forward to getting hold of Lawrence of Arabia, and along with the arrival of the new projector, I have to say that this was one of the most jaw-dropping experiences I've ever had with any type of home media. Now, I have seen Lawrence of Arabia projected on 4K, and I rate that as, I think it was about this time of year, probably about 10 years ago, something like that. And I went to what was then the Corner House Cinema in Manchester, saw it projected, and I remember walking home. I used to live next door to Old Trafford, Manchester United's ground, and I used to walk along the canal into town. It was about a 40-minute walk, and I remember just coming out of the cinema, and it was just getting lighter later, and it was, the spring sun was in the air, and I was just sort of in a daze of film love. I'd watched Lawrence of Arabia so many times, but to finally see it projected was something of a revelation, and I've never ever come anywhere near that feeling of watching the film other than when I've recently watched it projected at home. My God, the quality of the image is simply stunning. And Lawrence of Arabia is one of those films that when it comes out, it often becomes the film to get on whatever format. I remember the jump from from VHS to DVD was incredibly impressive. And then came the Blu-ray, which I put in side by side, and that is still absolutely brilliant as well. It's an incredible image, and that came out this lovely grand box set. And I was a bit sceptical, really, as just to how much of an upgrade this would be. And it goes beyond the pale of what I think you can expect for a home cinema experience. The fact that for a relatively little outlay, you can now get close. And there's always a thing with home cinemas. The screen it's never like the cinema. It's a bit of a strange... I always think when people say it's like home cinemas, unless you've got an actual cinema, and I think you don't need to have a screen at least over 300 inches to get anywhere near that. It's just like watching it on a huge television, basically, but projected nonetheless. And I was so immersed in this film that, to sound vaguely cliched, it was like watching it again for the first time. I noticed so much that I hadn't seen before, and it really just brought home to me how we're in a very different era of cinema, where nothing looks like this anymore. The cinematography of Freddie Francis, and I will also get onto that with when I talk about Ben-Hur, but it made me realise that I think we're sort of... There aren't any David Leans at the moment. There's no one with that kind of eye and that skill. I know it was Anne Coates that edited Lawrence of Arabia, but I feel like that type of craftsman and professionalism is on the wane. You can shoot so much coverage with digital cameras now, and you don't obviously have the huge cost of printing film, processing it. That, I understand on Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott at times had something like 10 cameras just to get as much as he possibly could. And this was a different type of filmmaking. You had to really plan and block everything to perfection. And I think somewhere we've lost that sense of scale. And of course, you would never make a film like Lawrence of Arabia now without using copious amounts of CGI. But when we come up to like the Bedouin camps in the desert, and you can see tents just going on for miles and miles, it's all there. None of it's fake, and you get completely absorbed in the world of Lawrence. I cannot believe how immersive I found this film, which gets me onto the subject of its sound mix as well. It has been upgraded to a Dolby Atmos, and I was a little bit sceptical whether or not that would be a good idea. Sometimes with Dolby Atmos on older films, they basically just put some echoes on the height channels, and I really thought that the soundstage of the film had really come alive. It didn't feel artificial or tacky in any way. It really complemented the film. The original 5.1 soundtrack is still included on the disc, and I did do, after I'd watched the film, did a kind of flicking backward and forth, and that still sounds incredible. So it is brilliant that it has finally been released. I picked it up for 25 quid. If you were, umming and ahhing whether or not to make this upgrade, 100% do. You will not be disappointed. It's an absolute testament just to how impressive the UHD format can be. And the film as well, it's over 2 discs, so it uses maximum amount of bit rate in it as well. So 100% do pick it up. But the next one, Ben-Hur, this is another film that I've owned on every format imaginable. I think I had it on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray looked fantastic. It was a really solid upgrade over the DVD. And this is another one where I just cannot believe how good a film can look. Again, it is a reminder that the art of cinematography is certainly on the wane. Films just don't look like this in Lawrence of Arabia anymore. I find a lot of them incredibly bland visually, and I think I really sort of long for the days when people were far more expressive with cinematography in their films. And Ben-Hur probably is the epic of all epics, let's be honest. It takes itself incredibly seriously, and it's all the better for it. And 2 hours and 20 minutes, you never feel that this film is lagging. It never bores me. And when you've put that much money on screen, I know that there would be the kind of the Hollywood excesses that we would kind of see with things like Before the Roman Empire and Cleopatra and whatnot. These are films which I believe mistook scale for substance and would ultimately pay the price. But with Ben-Hur, it has everything. It has the scale and the substance. It breathes when it gives itself room to breathe with kind of very personal scenes, and it knows when to do epic. And my God, that chariot race is phenomenal. I was wincing a few times when I was seeing some of the horses going over it, and I don't want to Google how many horses must have perished or been injured during the making of it. It would probably mar my viewing pleasure experience if I did. But there will be an episode on Ben-Hur one day. I will do a massive deep dive into it. But for the time being, I cannot recommend this UHD enough. It looks incredible, almost three-dimensional. That the image is that clear. And I know there's a lot of people who get their knickers in the knot over kind of film grain and whatnot. And is it there or isn't it there? And I just thought this literally looked like I was having a 70mm film projected onto my wall. Just gorgeous. And this is another one as well, which has been given a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. And again, this wasn't just about putting some echo and some faint noises in the height channels. There was actually one scene where I thought there was something on my roof, and it was actually, I think it was like a torch or something like that was burning in just slightly off stream, but it was just so immersive that I actually believed that the sound was being made by something else. And again, it does include, it's actually labelled as the 5.0 soundtrack, but it's not. It's actually a 5.1 soundtrack, and this is the original 6-track that was used on the film's production. That sounds brilliant as well, but this Atmos track really has brought this film to life even more. And it's another one where I cannot recommend getting hold of it enough. As I said, it's already out in America. You can pick up a steelbook from HMV, and there is a release coming out in a few weeks in England. But as far as I'm aware, that release doesn't include the extras, which I might be wrong, but that is something I have read online. So do be aware, if you can, try and get hold of the steelbook edition. Another shout out, just very quickly, was to a film put out by Second Run, and this was by the Polish director Alexander Ford, and it's a Polish epic called Knights of the Teutonic Order. I had never heard of it before. It was a blind buy, and wow, what a great fun historical epic. It's not a sword and sandal one. This is more kind of, well, obviously knights doing their thing, but I was completely immersed in it. Looks absolutely beautiful, and what an absolute joy, because like I said, I'd never heard of that film, and sometimes you can do a blind buy and be slightly disappointed. I most certainly was not with that. So that's a quick roundup of some of the home cinema purchases I've made over the past few weeks. Normal show service is going to resume very shortly. I am just doing some writing at the moment, but I didn't want to leave too long a gap before I got anything out. So many thanks for listening, and I'll be in contact soon. Bye.